Hello, my name is Ruth Whittington, and I'm the Riparian and Wetland AIM Data Analyst and a wetland ecologist with Colorado Natural Heritage Program. The following presentation will cover a brief overview of the technology we'll be using for data collection across the field season. Information presented in this video has been compiled into the Technology Manual in Appendix A of the Riparian and Wetland AIM Data Management Protocol. Look there for more detailed step-by-step instructions, and feel free to reach out to me with any questions that come up. Additionally, several tutorial videos are available to walk you through the general use of the Field Maps and Survey123 applications. As we've discussed during other training videos, the AIM strategy is made up of 5 key elements that aid in collecting standardized and defensible monitoring data. One of these aspects is that we use electronic data capture and management to increase our data quality, availability, and usability. For the Riparian and Wetland program, this will consist of using iPads in conjunction with Esri data collection and management applications, namely Field Maps and Survey123. In this presentation, I want to briefly talk about our data management system and provide strategies for good data management practices. This will include an overview of the data structure, important features of the applications we'll be using, and suggestions on managing your data. First, let's go over the data structure. Currently, all potential plots for the season are hosted in an ArcGIS online in a single layer. Starting a couple weeks before training, crew leads and crew managers sort through these points to evaluate whether they meet our target population, write out access directions, and group them together to start planning hitches. Prior to leaving on hitch, you will download this cloud data from ArcGIS Online to your iPads using an app called Field Maps. For those of you who have used Collector in the past, Field Maps is an updated version of Collector. During field sampling, you'll use this app to direct you to your sample location. Once you arrive as close as possible to your sample location, you'll use the plot and field maps to launch a new field visit point, where you can indicate the kind of sample you'll be taking. From this new point, you will launch all field forms to be opened in Survey123, automatically pushing forward some plot identification information. Upon arriving back into service, the field visits layer and all completed field forms will be submitted back to the cloud so that crew managers and the Riparian and Wetland AIM data team can review points. An additional external script will be run to check for obvious errors in the forms and create a QC error report for field teams to address. These error reports will be shared with field crews once they return back from break, where together we'll figure out the best way to fix the errors that show up. Now that I've gone over the data structure, I will highlight some aspects of data management to ensure all crew members are on the same page. Prior to field training, crew leads should complete the steps found in the technology manual on setting up your iPad for the season. I'm not going to go over these steps individually, but there are some crucial settings that all crew members should be aware of. Specifically, iPad settings should be changed to prevent auto-syncing and auto-updates. This is particularly important for Survey123, as mid-season app updates from Esri could break our forms and cannot be undone. Do not update Survey123 in the middle of the season unless you hear from the National Riparian and Wetland AIM team that it is okay to do so. Finally, consider any resources that would be good to download to your iPads for reference in the field. This should include the field protocol for lentic, riparian, and wetland systems, the data management protocol including the technology manual, and your hitch plans as they become finalized, as well as any other resources you find helpful. Once your iPads are set up, you're ready to start preparing to go out in the field. This includes a few preparatory steps to complete before each hitch. Crews should double-check their iPads to ensure that all necessary materials will function offline. Pre-trip checklists provide a good resource of tasks to accomplish before leaving service. First, you will need to download a map and field maps for offline use. You can do this directly from the field map shared to the BLM AIM Riparian and Wetland group, or from a map filtered to just the points you'll visit during this hitch. This step will need to be completed for every hitch, even if you are returning to the same area. We may update the field map during the season to fix issues with forms or map functionality, and these edits will be important to sync with the maps you use in the field. Next, you should download or update all Survey123 forms as necessary. This will be particularly important after training. For training, crew leads should have downloaded all wetland training forms, but once training has been completed, all training forms should be deleted and the real wetland aim forms should be downloaded. There may be small updates that occur after this initial download, but these will show up in a ribbon at the bottom of your Survey123 form menu when you're on Wi-Fi. Finally, a series of georeferenced maps of each site will be made available to crews to be used within the Paper Maps or Venza apps. These allow you to see a static map of the area of each of your sites and can help you determine plot layout, identify potential disturbances, and provide you with another source of road information. These are all available in your state's folder on Teams, with each site having 3 map files as seen here. Once you have all necessary files and maps downloaded, your iPads are ready for field data collection. You'll be using your iPads extensively in the field. Make sure to take care of them and closely track their battery life. If you're in the car, both iPads should always be plugged in. If you're in the field, consider turning down the screen brightness, turning the screen off if you aren't using it, and always make sure the screen is out of the sun so it doesn't overheat. When it comes to data collection, all data should start from a sample location in Field Maps. From this point, you will launch a field visit with the iPads right next to each other to ensure identical information is entered into both iPads. Then, after saving this field visit point, a pop-up will open which will allow you to launch Survey123 forms. Field forms take pieces of information from the field visit point, including the evaluation ID. These fields will not be able to be edited directly in the form itself, so I recommend double-checking once you have created the field visit point that the evaluation ID is using the correct plot-date combination and that it is identical across both iPads. Within the riparian and wetland aim program, we've created 13 forms that may be used during the field season that corresponds to the methods found within the field protocol. During every full sample visit, 11 of these forms should be used, independent of crew or project. These relate to core methods. 2 forms and part of Woody Structure and Annual Use form relate to contingent methods. These forms should only be opened if they are requested for a particular site, as seen in the information provided about the site in the plots layer of the Field Maps app. During site rejections, only location verification should be used to document reasons for field rejection. Finally, 2 additional forms, gap and soil stability, are adapted from the terrestrial AIM protocol. These forms will only be used by crews sampling in Alaska during full sample visits. Looking at the Survey123 forms themselves, when they are working and used correctly, they can do a lot for us. They automatically link all data to a location without needing an external GPS device. They can guide sampling and provide additional questions based on the answers you provide. For example, we have a set of notes and questions on the plot characterization form to help guide you through plot layout based on the dimensions of your plot. They can also flag and constrain data that doesn't make sense and prevent you from submitting values that don't match what is expected. Here we see in the water quality form that it will ask you additional questions about calibration if a value is higher or lower than expected. It also won't let me submit the form with a pH of 15, since pH values are on a scale of 0 to 14. Each of the forms have their own set of checks, and I've provided suggestions on form-specific best practices in the technology manual to begin to address questions that may come up. Many of these things will not make sense until you are working in the forms themselves, so I'll skip going over them here. However, I do want to highlight the known error form today, since there will not be a reason to cover it along with a method in the field. This will be the place to track any issues that come up with the data while you're sampling and once you've returned. To submit a new error, fill out the initial error documentation section of the form. Another section, Respond to Issue, may be used to respond to errors after they have been first submitted. Wait for further guidance from the riparian and wetland team before using this section of the form. The data team is actively working to update guidance on how that might be used later. You can submit several types of errors using the known error form. For example, you should use this form to submit corrections to your data that you are unable to fix yourself. Imagine you misidentify a species on LPI. To fix this problem yourself, you would have to go back through every point in LPI forms of each transect and look for entries of this species. For this kind of problem, you should instead submit a known error form to clearly explain the problem, and we'll take care of it on the back end. Alternatively, unanticipated technology issues may come up during sampling. While we tested each form extensively, there may be issues we didn't predict while testing the forms in the office. If you have a problem with one of the fields or a suggestion to improve its functionality, the known errors form can be used as a way to track these comments as you think of them in the field. It's also a good idea to take a screenshot of the problem as you are having it, as another way to explain the issue to us. Problems which require more immediate follow-up should be brought directly to the riparian and wetland AIM data team. They can help troubleshoot and take appropriate steps to avoid the same issue happening in the future. Finally, the data team is also working to use the form as a one-stop shop for addressing all QC issues that come up when they QC the data. For now, know that the scripted error check is only to be used by the data team, and crews should not worry about this issue type for now. When exiting any form in Survey123, you should carefully manage when you are saving and submitting your data. In the past, I've saved all but the most complicated forms and drafts until my crew has completed sampling. As a last check before leaving the site, we would then go through as a team with both iPads and make sure we have opened and completed every form as necessary. For many forms, some QA checks only happen when you submit the forms, so it is best to submit forms before you leave so you can correct any issues that come up. There are a couple exceptions to this based on the forms themselves. First, the most complicated transect-based forms, including LPI and woody structure and annual use, should be submitted immediately after completing data collection. Second, species inventory and unknown plants forms are often added to and adjusted during the office plant ID day at the end of the hitch. They also become more difficult to edit after they have been submitted for the first time. For these reasons, I would wait to submit these forms until after you've spent some time in the office finalizing your lists and identifying unknowns. Once you return from a hitch and before you leave on break, all forms should be submitted and field maps should be synced, so crew managers and the riparian and wetland AIM data team can review the data for errors and respond to data issues that may have come up. After submitting forms and syncing edits to field visits, the pop-up window that shows up after clicking the field visit point in Field Maps will highlight any issues on the number of forms submitted for a given site. Once your data is ready for review, crews should inform their crew managers as well as the data team. We will perform a few more checks on the forms while you're on break, flagging issues with missing forms and species issues across forms. Once crews return from break, these errors need to be addressed by crew members, either by fixing the problems themselves or by communicating needed changes with the data team. Data for a site is only truly complete when all forms have been submitted and all errors have been addressed by the crew. This concludes this technology overview. Thank you for listening.